Ever since I can remember, there's been a crazy woman living in the desolate forest behind the village. The people in the village say she's a murderer. Years ago, she killed her husband and his entire family, even her 4-year-old son, before fleeing here. It wasn't until that day when I wandered deep into the mountains that I discovered the villagers seemed to reveal their ghastly faces. Every time night fell, the forest echoed with the voices of the damned, sounding like desperate cries for help. Our house was far away, and I could hardly hear it, but as a child, I was so playful that I would occasionally catch a few whispers while walking home at night. At first, I asked my dad about it. He told me there was a woman living in that forest who had killed. I was about 12 or 13 then and filled with curiosity about everything. The village was isolated, with no fresh news for a long time, so I naturally seized the opportunity to ask him more. I begged my dad to tell me more stories. He only told me that the woman had killed her husband's family, and even her 4-year-old child hadn't escaped. Beyond that, he refused to say anything more. Over the years, I kept asking, but she never shared any additional details. Once, she inexplicably flew into a rage at me, nearly beating me to death. If my mom hadn't appeared just in time, I might have died under my dad's blows. After that, I never dared to mention that woman again. Not long after, my parents brought me to meet a glamorous couple. My mom said, "Sweetie, this is your Aunt Lisa and Uncle Bob. You'll be living with them in the city for school from now on." Many years later, I realized that my parents had essentially abandoned me. From that point on, my memories of the village and that woman became increasingly hazy. My mom passed away, I found out from Aunt Lisa. Aunt Lisa said she and my mom had been very close in childhood. Later, she married a wealthy man, and we gradually lost touch. The night before I was set to leave, Aunt Lisa contacted me unexpectedly, insisting that I shouldn't go alone and that she would catch up with me. Aunt Lisa reminded me to go straight home upon entering the village, not to wander around, and to avoid talking to strangers. Over the years, she had always cared for me but had never shown such a serious expression. I had a feeling this trip wouldn't be straightforward. The journey back was proving to be harder than I expected. I took a flight, then a 6-hour bus ride, and there were still some mountainous roads ahead that I would have to walk myself. I hadn't had a good night's sleep in nearly 30 hours and felt utterly exhausted. I asked people around, but no one wanted to help. Only an elderly woman told me that the path was treacherous, rarely traveled, and that I should avoid it, especially with nightfall approaching. Aunt Lisa suggested I find a small inn to stay the night and that she would join me in the village the next day. Nearly 10 years had passed, and that village seemed to have been paused in time, showing little change since I left. As soon as Aunt Lisa and I entered the village, we were immediately met with unfriendly stares. The villagers were glaring at my back, sending chills down my spine, and I instinctively leaned closer to Aunt Lisa. Why were they staring at us like that? Aunt Lisa, however, seemed unfazed. She had long been aware of the local xenophobia. When Aunt Lisa took me away years ago, she had also wanted to take my mom, but my mom had stubbornly refused. For all these years, my mom had never come to visit me in the city. Whenever I mentioned wanting to see her, she scolded me, saying I could only return with my head held high if I made something of myself in the city. I thought I shouldn't listen to her. I wanted to see her one last time. Soon, I saw the entrance of my childhood home draped in white ribbons, swaying gently in the breeze, full of unspeakable sorrow. My dad walked out upon hearing the noise. The tall, robust figure I remembered now seemed hunched and frail. My mom's passing had clearly taken a toll on him, leaving him looking utterly worn out. When he saw me, tears filled his eyes instantly. I quickly reached for his hand, feeling warmth despite his trembling, calloused grip from years of hard work. My dad told me that my mom had died from a fall on the mountain. At that moment, I didn't doubt his words. However, where I would spend the night became a problem. My dad didn't have an extra room for me. The other rooms had long since been converted into pigsties. He said there was an abandoned house nearby that had been vacant for just a short while and could still be cleaned up for us to stay in. Although Aunt Lisa had grown accustomed to the good life in the city, she wasn't completely out of touch. The three of us tidied up the abandoned house a little while my dad hurried back to keep vigil. I suggested we keep vigil for my mom, but my dad insisted we were exhausted from the day and needed proper rest, saying it was safer to hold vigil during the day rather than at night. There was no signal in the village and conditions weren't great. Aunt Lisa and I went to bed early, and especially in that quiet night, memories of my childhood in the village flooded back to me. Though life had been hard, my dad was never biased against daughters. I had a carefree childhood. The images of being with my mom played through my mind, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. Afraid to disturb Aunt Lisa's rest, I did my best to suppress my voice and eventually fell asleep without realizing when it happened. The next day, Aunt Lisa woke me up. Behind the house, there was a small stream, one of the best places in the village, untouched by urban development. I could brush my teeth and wash my face by the stream just like when I was a child. As I squatted by the water brushing my teeth, my gaze inevitably drifted toward the desolate forest behind the village. I thought again about the madwoman living there, wondering if she was still around. However, I hadn't heard the same noises from my childhood last night. Perhaps she had fled to another place. I tend to feel more sentimental at night. At that moment, I knelt in front of my mother's spirit tablet, and I felt more composed than I had been last night. I wasn't very clear on the village's funeral customs. I only knew they typically buried the dead in traditional earth graves. I asked Aunt Lisa about it, and she said that this was not something for a child like me to worry about. I couldn't help the adults and could only accompany her in sorting through my mother's belongings. My dad told me that my mom left me an iron box in their room and asked me to get it. Their room was even more dilapidated than I remembered, containing only a bed, a quilt, and a table, with the box sitting on the table. I spotted the box immediately, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened it. Inside were a few pieces of jewelry, likely my grandmother's dowry, and a notebook. I felt puzzled. My mom couldn't read, so how could she have left me a notebook? I opened the notebook and flipped through the pages several times, trying to understand. The first page was covered with strange symbols. Upon closer inspection, some of the random characters seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite recall them. It wasn't until dinner that my dad's words suddenly triggered a memory. After I parted from my dad, I hadn't seen him since. He had always been kind to me as a child. This time back in the village, he was quite frugal, but without hesitation, he had killed the pig we had raised for many years. "Sweetie, you've grown up now. Your mom can rest easy in heaven," he said. I remembered that he had once helped my mom learn to read. Oh right, how could I have forgotten that? After Aunt Lisa got married, she would occasionally bring me books. My first teacher was Aunt Lisa. I recalled learning a few Chinese characters from her and then running to teach my mom. My mom was happy to teach me, even though her handwriting was quite messy. I could still make out some of it. The characters in that notebook were indeed the ones I had taught her. At night, I struggled to recognize the characters in the notebook under the moonlight, but after so many years, I could only vaguely discern a few simple words. Why did the woman from the back mountain mention the madwoman among the things she left for me? And what did that last entry mean? Wasn't that woman a killer? I was at a loss and thought I would wait until things settled down with my mom before telling Aunt Lisa and asking for her advice. My dad reminded me to ride my motorcycle into town to buy some items for my mother's burial. During the day, I could still see the path, but when I finished shopping and prepared to head back, I realized that night fell much earlier in the village than in the city. It was completely dark now. I was riding my dad's motorcycle without any streetlights or headlights. I didn't even notice when I went the wrong way until there was no more road ahead. The night was pitch black, and the moonlight was blocked by dense leaves, making it impossible to see the rugged path below my feet. I walked cautiously, but still couldn't escape misfortune. I stepped on a rock and stumbled again, falling to the ground. I couldn't help but regret not bringing my phone. Even if there was no signal to call for help, at least I could have used its light. I didn't dare lie on the ground for too long, fearing strange bugs might crawl onto me. I've been afraid of such things since childhood and still hadn't gotten over it as an adult. Just as I stood up and turned, a pale face suddenly appeared in front of me, startling me into a scream. I stumbled backward until a rock tripped me again, and I ended up sitting on the ground. My heart raced as I gasped for breath, my eyes fixed firmly on the ground, too scared to look up. How could there be anyone in the mountains at this hour? Had I seen wrong? Just when I thought I was dreaming, a low, raspy voice came from above, making it hard to discern the person's gender. "Who are you?" Gathering my courage, I raised my head. In the absence of moonlight, the face was eerily luminous, with messy long hair and a pale complexion, looking unusually gaunt. As I steadied my nerves, I began to guess the identity of the woman before me. Taking advantage of the darkness, I quietly shifted to the side. But it seemed she could see my movements. Her eyes were fixed on me. At that moment, I felt as though I was standing on the edge of an abyss. This woman carried a heavy past. Our eyes locked, yet I felt oddly reassured that she wouldn't harm me. "I'm from Songshan village. I accidentally got lost in the mountains." Upon hearing this, her expression changed noticeably, her eyes flickering with an unnameable emotion. The night in the mountains felt thicker and more oppressive. She suddenly said something I couldn't comprehend. When I didn't move, she frowned and gestured for me to follow her. I didn't actually intend to follow her, but then I thought that if she truly wanted to harm me, I had nowhere to escape. I had already stumbled earlier, and now my ankle was starting to ache. So, I limped along behind her, keeping some distance. I sensed that she held many mysteries. She didn't appear to be someone with a history of murder, yet there was a murderous glint in her eyes. Not far ahead, I spotted a dilapidated house. The inside was dimly lit, making it hard to see. I stopped in my tracks at the entrance. Although the house looked run down from the outside, it was surprisingly clean inside, clearly taken care of by her. I felt uneasy.
Did you hear what she said?
I asked, glancing up, my gaze wavering. You're a murderer. She heard my words and let out a laugh. Under the soft yellow light, her complexion seemed to brighten a little. Yet her laughter still left me feeling perplexed.
What are you laughing at? Did I say something wrong? You killed your husband and even your own child.
The woman fixed me with a sharp gaze, and I could see the hatred burning in her eyes.
I killed that bunch of bastards. Why would I leave that beast of a child alive? Do you know why I killed them?
In an instant, she was right in front of me. I wanted to back away, but she held onto me tightly.
No matter what, you had no right to kill them. The law should have punished them.
She seemed shocked by my words, and I couldn't understand why. This was what I had been taught. She finally released my hand, saying,
So, there are still people in your village who know about the law. Do you know I was sold here for $80? Do you know I had just received my college acceptance letter before I was brought here? If I hadn't been sold here, my life would have been completely different.
Her voice edged toward hysteria, and my mind was a whirlwind of confusion.
What trafficking? What college? What future? They imprisoned me in a pigsty after buying me back, and I was assaulted every night.
I said, tears spilling unbidden. I wanted to escape, but the villagers were all in it together. I couldn't get away at all. Every time they caught me, I was beaten nearly to death, and eventually, they even put shackles on me. I couldn't believe a single word she said. How could I trust a murderer? Yet my clenched fists betrayed my true feelings. I was a woman too. Even if she were lying, I couldn't help but feel sympathetic. She didn't need my response and continued. I thought that if I gave birth to the children they wanted, I would be free. But what I didn't expect was to sink even deeper into the abyss. At first, it was just those two, but later, as long as the price was right, anyone could lead a hellish life.
I survived for 5 years, and in the end, I had no choice but to kill them. What are you thinking?
Aunt Lisa's voice jolted me back to reality.
Later, with that woman's help, I made it back to the village. But I never mentioned that night's events to anyone. For days afterward, I was in a daze, her desperate figure constantly flashing through my mind. Aunt, can you tell me about the woman in the desolate forest?
I asked.
There's nothing worth discussing about a murderer.
A flicker of unease passed over Aunt Lisa's face, quickly vanishing, but I noticed it, tipping the scales of my heart in favor of that woman.
I heard she was sold as well.
I whispered.
Aunt, I told you, don't mention that woman again.
Aunt Lisa turned away, ignoring me. After my mom's funeral, as I stood at the village's edge saying goodbye to my dad, I found myself glancing unconsciously toward the forest. Back in the city, I buried myself in catching up on my missed schoolwork. The intense emotions from the village faded amidst the vibrant city lights, and the woman slipped once again out of my life. Until that day in class, the topic of women's trafficking felt particularly heavy. When I returned home, I found it hard to concentrate in my study for a long time. The words of that woman's accusations echoed in my mind with growing clarity, and I felt I couldn't remain indifferent. I rummaged through my belongings and found the notebook my mom left for me. Aunt Lisa could also read my mom's writing. She moved the notebook aside, looked at me, and pulled me down onto the sofa. That year, Aunt Lisa was 20, and next door, the Huang family had spent $8,000 to buy a bride. The village was bustling with excitement, and a banquet was held. The girl, who was the same age as Aunt Lisa, was tied up and had her mouth and nose covered. The firecrackers outside no longer celebrated the new year but heralded a dark reality. Aunt Lisa told me her name was Claire, born in spring. Claire had just received her acceptance letter from college 2 weeks prior. In that era, getting into college was a remarkable achievement. At first, Claire kept pleading with Huang to awaken his sense of compassion. However, in this deep mountain, all rights and morals were eroded by feudal decay, and marriage became a despairing trap. Just like Claire's diploma, which felt completely meaningless in this decaying prison. That night, Huang was determined to marry his new bride. When he saw Claire resist fiercely, the elderly couple joined in to help him. Ultimately, with all three of them working together, Claire fell into their clutches. After that, beatings became a daily occurrence. Even when Claire desperately tried to escape, she would just be surrounded by the villagers. The village chief occasionally said he would conduct a serious investigation but ultimately brushed it aside. To prevent Claire from escaping again, Huang locked her in the pigsty. The next day, Claire was quiet. Huang thought she had come to terms with her fate, but when he approached, he discovered she had cut her wrists. The elderly couple quickly called for help, and the villagers assisted in taking Claire to the hospital in town. However, the doctors at the hospital were slow and seemed more concerned about the consultation fee in their hands. Ultimately, Claire was stabilized, but Huang knew if someone committed suicide again, the $8,000 would be wasted. He hoped that Luke's mother could persuade Claire to see reason. Luke had been bought 3 years earlier. Back then, he pondered every night about how to escape, but fate had thwarted him. Luke advised Claire that escaping wasn't a solution because there was only one road out of the village, and many villagers couldn't leave at all. He suggested gaining trust first and then finding a way out. Luke's presence gave Claire hope. She no longer resigned herself to her fate, but began to accept the role of a mountain bride in the hopes of one day breaking free. Gradually, life in the village settled into a facade of calm. But the flame burning deep within hadn't extinguished due to the surface tranquility. Finally, with the hope of spring on the horizon, Huang agreed to let Claire wash clothes by the river and allowed her to take a small path. As long as she took the main road, climbed over the nearby mountain, she would see the highway, and everything would be manageable. Across from the high mountain, Claire firmly etched Luke's words in her mind. The next time she went to wash clothes, she used Luke's distraction to successfully escape under the pretense of needing convenience. Hank waited for a long time without seeing Claire return, finally realizing something was wrong and calling the villagers to search for her. By the time Hank chased after her, Claire had already reached the highway, her heart ignited with a yearning for freedom, and her fatigue dissipated. In this desolate place, she finally encountered a driver, but he asked for $10 as fare, a fortune for Claire, who had no money at all. The driver ignored her frantic pleas and left without a backward glance. Just when Claire was sinking into despair, the appearance of a police car rekindled her hope. However, she didn't expect that the police, intending to take her home, would instead turn her over to Hank, and once again, Claire could not escape her tragic fate. Hank slipped $100 to the police, watching as Claire was beaten into unconsciousness. Like an animal, she was locked back in the pigsty. Time flew, yet the years felt painfully slow as they passed in torment. The flame of despair within her only grew stronger. With the seasons changing, Claire lost count of how many harsh winters she had endured. Unable to bear it any longer, Claire confided her suffering to Luke, the only person in the village who could understand her pain. Yet unlike Claire, Luke had long given up the idea of escape, having succumbed to the harshness of life. It was a resigned choice, a decision made on countless nights where tears soaked his pillow. It was only when Claire learned she was pregnant that it shattered her last defense. This child was like a noose, tightening around her, gradually numbing her urge to flee. In this isolated mountain, all forms of civilized order were kept at bay, and the once beautiful village had turned into a breeding ground for crime. The fallacy of "those who are unaware bear no guilt" was twisted into a distorted moral justification. In October, her pregnancy culminated in the birth of a boy. But the absurd reality continued to assault Claire's understanding. Men entered her room with money and lascivious smiles, leaving shortly after with their pants raised. Her resistance only earned her Hank's brutal beatings, and the seeds of hatred quietly took root in her heart, nourished day by the men who came and went. Spring was approaching again, and some would remain in the spring forever. That day, Hank lay panting beside Claire. Claire sat silently next to him, her long hair obscuring her eyes as she glared coldly at Hank. She reached for the scissors hidden under her pillow without hesitation. In an instant, blood gushed from Hank's neck. He clutched at his throat in shock, unable to make a sound, only able to look at Claire in terror. In the end, he stared wide-eyed, unable to close them. Claire found the key to the chain on Hank. She pushed open the door to the elderly couple's room, where they were fast asleep, confronted by the demon who had destroyed her life. In that moment, Claire's hands no longer trembled.
Kill them, kill them, kill them, and the nightmare will end.
But when she turned and saw her son sleeping peacefully, she hesitated. Thinking of the hellish life over these years, Claire was filled with hatred, determined not to let that man off the hook. She didn't have time to escape. At just that moment, a man carrying money witnessed her killing her own son. The villagers locked Claire away in the backwoods. She didn't know if there would ever be a day when she could escape this cursed mountain. A thought surged in her mind: I need to report this. The education I received over the years wouldn't allow me to stand by and do nothing. Aunt Lisa didn't agree, and I could guess her reaction. She said the time had passed too long, and without evidence, the police might not take the case. Even if the police were willing to take the case, we might not be able to rescue Claire. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, I had to try. She had spent 20 years hoping to leave that place. Aunt Lisa said I was very much like my mom, soft-hearted. I thought Aunt Lisa was the same. With Uncle Bob's help, we found Claire's father. The moment I saw him, tears streamed down my face. He was an elderly man, frail and stooped, yet he had traveled a long way for uncertain news. He gripped my hand tightly. That frail, old hand pained me, but I didn't have the heart to pull away. Aunt Lisa confirmed some information with him, and we could basically be sure that the woman was indeed his daughter. The old man asked me, "Is my daughter doing well?" His eyes were filled with urgent pleading, leaving me unsure of how to respond, but he seemed to sense something.
It's okay, I understand, as long as she's alive.
I couldn't imagine how he had endured these years, bearing the pain of losing his daughter while still having to comfort his fragile wife, who had now also passed. In this world, the only thing keeping him alive was the uncertainty of his daughter's fate. Finding Claire, even if just her body, had become the obsession of his life. After much effort, I found myself once again on the road to that cursed village. We chose to set out at night. The desolate forest where Claire was hidden was quite remote, and the car couldn't make it in. Just as we reached her, we saw flickering lights coming from the village. I had a bad feeling. After all these years, Claire had not escaped. It seemed she had expected this scene, mumbling to herself,
It's useless, it's going to be useless.
This was never a lawless land. The villagers quickly arrived and surrounded the police car. Their torches lit up the entire sky. I could see their faces clearly, perhaps even some familiar ones from my memories. From a distance, everyone seemed exceptionally kind, but at this moment, they appeared hideous. The malice in human nature was truly chilling. The negative energy was suffocating. The police protected us from behind, but they couldn't hold back the villagers' advance.
You're trafficking people and illegally detaining them.
The police shouted angrily. The villagers rebutted.
There are plenty of men who buy wives. Are all of them breaking the law? If you have the ability, then arrest all of us.
Clearly, they still didn't comprehend the crimes they were committing in front of the police. Even under the threat of guns, their bullying didn't cease. Their arrogance became a force that challenged authority. This had been the case for centuries. Clearly, they felt no fear. The police called for reinforcements while we settled in the village, and from a distance, I saw my dad pacing back and forth at the door of the house. I quickened my pace and ran up, but before I could steady myself, I was slapped hard. The force was strong, and I stumbled backward. Aunt Lisa, rushing from behind, was startled and immediately pulled me behind her.
What are you doing, Hank? Who told you to meddle in this?
I didn't react for a moment, but in just an instant, I understood what my dad meant. What did it mean to meddle? Hadn't he been trafficked and imprisoned for 20 years, separated from my parents? Wasn't that worth being concerned about?
Don't preach to me, I can't understand that. I'm telling you, as long as I'm here, you should stay out of these matters.
The grand image I had of my father collapsed in an instant. I didn't understand. In this village that heavily favored sons over daughters, wasn't his love for me genuine? He was clearly different from those villagers, so why was he trying to stop me from helping Claire? Early the next morning, the villagers blocked the door to my house. Each of them held a hoe, their eyes fixed menacingly on my front door. Faced with such a situation, even the police didn't dare act recklessly. Not even giving a greeting as they tried to take someone away. Is this how you police operate? The police sought out the village chief, hoping to find a breakthrough through him. But it was clear that the village chief was not a benevolent man.
I didn't tell you in advance. I didn't want to trouble you.
I'm never afraid of trouble, the village chief said, his eyes sweeping back toward us. Girl, haven't you learned anything from your mother's situation? His words left me confused. I didn't understand what he was saying. What did this have to do with my mom? In times of confusion, people instinctively seek trust from others. So I turned my gaze to my dad, hoping he could answer my questions. However, he averted his eyes from me and said to the village chief,
What are you telling the kid?
The village chief didn't linger at my house, but his words lingered in my mind. I tried to stop my dad from leaving. My mom's death may not have been as he said. What does he mean? What should I remember? What does it even mean? He just doesn't want you to take Claire away. My dad's gaze flickered, but I found his words laughable. They were trafficking and imprisoning women. The police already had evidence. Claire was primarily a victim before becoming a perpetrator. If Huang's family hadn't trafficked her, how could she have ended up dead?
We are definitely taking Claire away. That's what my mom wanted. What do you mean by your mom's wishes?
I asked angrily. In the box my mom left me, there was a notebook filled with things I couldn't understand. It was only when I met Claire that I realized my mom hoped I would rescue her. As soon as I finished speaking, my dad seemed to lose all his strength and sank down onto the bed. Your mom had always been trying to help Claire escape, but the villagers were keeping a close watch, and she never found a suitable opportunity.
She had planned to sneak away with Claire at night, but she was discovered. To cover for Claire, she tried to divert the villagers' attention, but was recognized as your mom, and she couldn't stop in time. She slipped and fell down the mountain.
Your mom did indeed die from a fall. At that moment, I finally began to believe in the notion of the inherent malice of humanity. This was a stack of money he had never seen before. He realized that only by leaving with the police could there be any hope for change.
We haven't done anything wrong.
He shoved the money into my dad's hands, looking helplessly at my dad and Aunt Lisa. Aunt Lisa quickly responded, "Just get out of here." She tossed the money back at their faces.
I didn't seek you out regarding my sister. Why are you threatening us?
The village committee members were not as arrogant as the village chief, especially since this involved a life.
What does your sister's situation have to do with us? She fell to her death because she couldn't stand. It's just bad luck. You're lucky to live at the expense of someone else's life. Aren't you afraid of having nightmares at night?
Aunt Lisa and I were forced back, and my dad looked worried. Sweetie, we've made enemies. Life is going to be tough from now on. I didn't plan on letting you stay here anymore. Come live with me in the city. I don't need you for food. We waited for 2 more days, and finally, the police reinforcements arrived, fully armed and carrying submachine guns. At that moment, my heart finally calmed down. This cursed mountain was finally going to be cleansed by the law. This time, nearly all the villagers came to block our exit from the village. The police showed no hesitation, raised their shields, and opened a path to the light for us. As the police car drove toward the city, I saw Claire's eyes glistening with tears. Will he regret it? Regret losing his life, regret losing over 20 years with his family? Claire's father had already been waiting at the police station. The moment the police car stopped, he unsteadily approached us, trembling. Claire, is that really my daughter? Tears flowed freely from his eyes. I'd always thought of myself as not being an emotional person, but in the face of such raw feelings, I believed no one could remain rational. Seeing this scene filled my dad with regret. I was confused back then, I even hit you. Now that I think about it, if you had experienced these things, I fear I would have wanted to tear those people apart. Your mother was worried that the village's atmosphere would harm you, which is why she had Aunt Lisa take you away. Thanks to your mother and Aunt Lisa, you've become someone who can discern right from wrong and has a kind heart. I can't help but ask, will this world ever be okay? The malice and darkness were nauseating and hard to face. However, we still had to gather the courage for the sake of countless youths and countless selves. In 1995, official statistics reported that the number of trafficked women reached 80,555. I was actually afraid to confront such sensitive realities. Each word I wrote filled me with anger. However, news of college students being abducted was not uncommon. We treated it merely as a margin of life, using it as a cautionary tale, warning ourselves and our children not to trust others easily. The beautiful mountains, the flocks in the villages far from the city, still carried their rustic songs. But they no longer shone, instead, they exuded a foul stench. They had turned away from our laws, morals, and humanity. If ignorance means innocence, do we have to forgive? Facing the most monstrous human traffickers, women felt so helpless. The targets of trafficking were not only ignorant rural girls, but also educated university students. The gap between reality and ideals had been infinitely widened. In this land far from the city, the law had lost its original meaning. Rape, which should have been one of the law's most serious offenses, had become the most legitimate and effective means here. Once the children grew to 5 or 6 years old, you would become a kite in their hands, comfortably playing the role of a supportive wife and mother, while we, the invisible bystanders, were all accomplices.